Hello, welcome to my channel. I am Timitope. Today we'll be going through the sewing part of this dress. We already have the drafting part in the previous video. In case you have not seen it, I'm going to leave a link in the comment section. So kindly subscribe, like, and then sit back. Let's get started. So this is the front part of the dress, the upper bodice. So we'll be closing the darts, but on the left side there is going to be frills. So we'll be closing one side first, which is the right side. So I'll be facing right on the right. You can see the way I'm placing it. Then I'm going to close up the dart because we have a shoulder dart there. So I'm going to be closing it up like this. I'll be starting from the down upward. And so I've closed the right side. Now we have the left side. So before I close the left side, I'm going to make a frills on it with this fabric. You can see what I'm holding. I have 2 inches of this like this. So but if it's on fold, because it's on fold, so when I open it up, it's going to be 4 inches. So how I got it is that I measured the dart line, that's from the shoulder to the waist. Then I multiply what I have there by 3, and so that's how what I use to indicate the length of the frills. So now I'm just going to pleat on that one side like this before covering it up like that and sewing it up. So I already made the pleats. You can see how neat it is, though I have some excess there, but it's better to have excess than to have to manage the fabric. So I'll just cut that off, and then I'm going to be, you can see also at the end there, I did not pleat it immediately from the beginning because I don't want some bulginess, so I left some space before I start pleating. And I'm going to place it on it like that, then we'll start sewing it. So I'm going to sew it from the down just like I did to the other side. So this is the back part. We'll be closing the dart to the right, will be facing the right. I'll be closing it on both sides. So I already did that. Look at, this is the front pattern now, the upper part. So I already ironed it. I spread it out to iron. You can see the way I did. So I will be joining the shoulders of, I'll bring the back pattern in, then I'll be joining it on the shoulder, both sides, and I'm going to do the same thing to the lining. I'll be joining the fabric separately and also the lining separately. So I'm just going to pin it down so that it will stay put and it will not be shifting. And so after joining it on the side also, I'm also going to join the side by 1 inch, which was the same allowance that we added. And I'm going to do the exact same to the lining. So I already did that. You can see the way it's looking. And now I'm going to bring the lining. You can see the lining also. I've already done the same thing to it. I joined it separately, join the shoulder, the side by 1 inch, same allowance. So now I'll be joining the fabric to the lining. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place it like this and then bring the lining also on it. So I'll make sure the right side is facing the right side. That is, the right side of the lining is facing the right side of the fabric. So you can see the way I'm doing. So I'm just going to go ahead to pin it down. I'll be sewing the neck round. So pin it down, making sure that the joining align with the joining of the clothes align with the joining of the lining. And you can see that I'm opening the joining up. Where I joined the shoulder, I'm opening it up so that I can lay flat. And so that's what I'm going to do to all the junctions where we have joining. I'm going to pin it down and I'm going to sew around the neckline. So the joining will be from the neckline first. So I don't want it to shift, so I just need to pin everything to put it in place. So I'll just go ahead and sew like this. So I already run the stitch on it, so I'm going to notch it. And when you are notching, you have to be very careful so that you don't cut through your sewing. You have to stop, feel like before the sewing, you don't allow it to cut through. So after notching, I'm just going to open it up and then top stitch like this. See the way I'm putting it, you can see that the sewing is facing the lining part before top stitching. Don't let it face the fabric side. So I already top stitched and I've also gone ahead to press it down with my iron, so you can see the way it looks. And now I'm just going to take it up, then try to do the other part, which is the zip part. The next part that I'll be sewing is the zip part, so be closing that up. So I'll just be turning it like that, ensuring that the right side is facing the right side of the zip side. So I'm just going to pin it down before sewing. So I'll sew that place down, and I'm also going to do the same thing to the other side. This is it. I already ironed it. You can see how flat it is. So next thing we'll be doing is to close the armhole area. We are going to be running a stitch on it. So we are going to be joining the lining to the fabric there. You can see the way I'm opening my stitch up so that it can be flat. I'm going to open both sides and then pin it down so that I can be able to easily run a stitch on it. And also that part, the exact armhole, I'm also going to open that up and also open that of the fabric up where I joined it, and then bring it together, then pin it down so that it can be easy for me to run a stitch on it. And I'm also going to pin all the places around so that everything can lay flat and it could be easy for me, because if I didn't do that I might have to start struggling with it. So it's better to just pin it down for it to be okay. And I'm also going to do the same thing to the other side. So I'll just run a stitch on it. And also the lower part, you can see I'm also going to run a stitch to hold it together. So at that journey part, I'm starting from where I joined them together. So you can see I'm going to open it up, try to spread it so that I'm going to have a flat sewing. It will not be bulgy. So my first target is those parts where I have joined. You can see the way I'm folding it, so that because I have kind of much allowance there, I don't want it to bulge. If you don't want much allowance, you can do like half of an inch. You can use half of an inch for your same allowance. But my clients want some allowance, so that's why I had to put 1 inch there. So I'm just going to fold it back like that so that it will not bulge, and then pin it down. Then it will be easier for me to pin the rest part down now after pinning the major joining areas. So I'll go ahead to pin the other side too, and then run a stitch on it. So the next thing we'll be doing now is to fix the sleeve in the armhole. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure that sleeve part, the armhole. You can see I have 9 inches there, and so I'm going to measure the sleeve to the upper part. So I'm going to measure 9 inches and then mark it. You can see I'm marking it with my chalk. And remember that we added 1 inch seam allowance for the sleeve, so I'm just going to mark that 1 inch down towards the end of the sleeve. And I'm going to ensure that the end part of the sleeve is straight so that I can easily fold it. So I'm just going to take my ruler and then connect the lines to just draw a straight line. So after that, I'm going to sew it. I'm going to run a stitch on it, and also the lower part I'm going to fold it in by 1 inch and then fix it to the upper bodice. So to fix it now, I'm going to be locating the armhole part on the sleeve where I joined. So I'm going to connect that part to the lower part of the armhole too. You can see the way I'm doing it, so that's where I'm going to connect before I will now sew it all around. We are done with the upper part, so we're going for the skirt part now. So this is the front part of the skirt part, and so I'll be placing the back part on it, making sure that the right side is facing the right side. So you can see where I'm placing it, while the zip part is in the middle. So I'm making sure that the front side is facing the back side. I'm making sure that the right side is facing the right side. So I'm just going to go ahead to pin down the sides. So I want it to lay very flat so that I can easily sew on it. So I'm going to be taking the seam allowance, which is 1 inch, on the waistline, hip line, and the lower part of the skirt. And after doing this, I'm going to take my ruler, my curve rule, and then mark the shape. So you can see where I'm placing my curve rule in order to get all the points. So I'm just going to go ahead to mark it, and then I'll be turning it on the other side to also get the other part of the skirt. And I'm also going to do the same thing to the other side. So I'll just run a stitch on it. So I already did that. You can see I've run the stitch on both sides, and I've also run a stitch on the lining too on both sides with the same allowance, 1 inch allowance on both sides. So now we'll be joining the lower part of the skirt. So I'll be joining the lining, the lower part of the lining to the lower part of the skirt. So remember that when we were cutting this skirt part, the lining is 1 inch shorter than the fabric. So I'm going to place that's why we'll be starting the joining from the lower part of the skirt. So I'll be making sure that that part that we have joining, where we join the front to the back, is where I'll be starting from first, pin it together first, so that I can spread it out and I can have a flat surface. So you can see I'm spreading it out, both the lining and the fabric, then pinning it down so that everything can lay flat. And I'm going to pin it as much as I can so that I can have everything can stay put and have a flat surface to work on. After pinning it, I'm going to run a stitch on it. I'm going to sew it down. So I'm just going to sew it now. I've already done that, and I've also run a top stitch on the lower part of the skirt. I can see that some part of the skirt has flipped up, of the fabric, and they are now rhyming together with the lining. So I'll be joining the zip side. So I'm going to flip it to the other side just like this, making sure that the right side is also facing the right side. I can see the overlapping parts. So I'm going to run a stitch on it. Before that, I'm going to pin it down as usual so that everything can stay put and there will not be excess anywhere. After pinning everything down, I'm going to sew it, like run a stitch around that. And you can see I've done that to both sides, and I've also pressed it down my iron. So I've also top stitched the upper part, the waistline of the skirt. So you can go ahead to interlock it or weave it, whichever you call it in your area. So now I'm going to be closing this up, the zip area and also the overlapping parts. So I'm just going to flip it to the other side so that I can have the right side facing the right side. So you can see the overlapping part, the zip area. So I'm going to pin it down so that I can mark out the zip area where the zip is going to stop, and then stitch the other part to join the overlapping, the slit area where it's going to overlap. So that's where the overlap is going to start from, the slit area. So I'm going to pin that too. Then I'm going to take my tape and measure 10 inches. That's where the zip is going to stop. Then I'm going to mark it there. And then the other part, I will be sewing it down to the overlapping area. So I'm just going to sew it like that. So I'll be sewing it by 1 inch to join this and stop at the slit area, then curve it to meet that overlapping area. So I'm going to use my ruler to draw that with my chalk, and then I'm going to slant it to meet the overlap area. You can see that. So I'm just going to run a stitch on it like that. The next thing we'll be working on is the peplum part. So you can see I already ironed my stay on both the lining and also the fabric of the peplum. And I've done that. The peplum is in 2 parts. One is longer than the other. So I've done that on both sides. So the next thing we'll be doing now is to make sure that this longer part, I want that part to be straight. You can see it's a bit slanty. So I want it to be straight. So to do that, I'm going to bring my ruler. I'm going to try to make it straight, and then draw it with my chalk. And I'm going to cut that part off. So now I'll be getting a straight part for that peplum. And so after doing this, I'm going to be joining the lining to the fabric of the peplum. So I'll be joining it from the lower part. And after joining, I'm also going to top stitch before turning it around. So I'm going to join and top stitch after joining. And I'm going to do the same thing to the shorter peplum too. So this is it. I already joined it and I've top stitched on the joint area. I'll be placing the peplum on the waist area of the skirt. So I want it to overlap. Usually it's not meant to overlap. So if you're making yours, you might not make it overlap. But this is what my client wants. My client wants it to overlap. So to know where to place the peplum, I'm going to measure the waist area where the frill starts from. That's where I want the peplum to start from. So I'm going to measure that. That gives me 11.5. So I'm also going to measure that 11.5 on the waistline of the skirt, and then start the longer peplum from there. So I'm going to place it there, pin it, and also pin it around. And then the shorter one also, I'm also going to place it there, pin it a bit under it, pin it around. Then I'm going to top stitch. I'm going to stitch it down. Then I'll be joining the waist upper part to the skirt part. So this is it. I already pin it together. I'll join it together and then fix my zip. Kindly give this tutorial a thumb up and subscribe. So this is the final look. Thank you for watching. See you in my next tutorial.